I don't know much about sports, but I'm pretty sure if you're training for a marathon or if you're just trying to get really good at any sort of sport, you're not going to be pushing yourself to your upper limits every single day. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seven Sage Podcast. We are your trusty hosts. I'm Bailey, and I'm joined with somebody who hasn't been on the podcast yet, but is hopefully about to be more of a regular face to see. Eric, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me why you're here.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Eric. I know there's several Erics at Seven Sage, so I'm Eric Who. I'm one of them. One of the many.
Yeah, why do we have so many Erics?
Special. Yeah, I'm special my own way, of course. But yeah, I've been with Seven Sage for about a year now. I've been teaching the LSAT for about 6 years nearly now. Really enjoying my time here at Seven Sage. Happy to be here. Listen to the podcast occasionally. Yeah, I don't know. What else is there to say about me?
Yeah. Host. In my head, you're the Eric. Well, now that I know this about you, you're the jazz Eric.
Sure, yeah. That's a good way to remember me. Sure.
Perfect. Yes, he knows a lot about jazz. So if anybody's ever confused about any of those pesky little RC passages, we were just talking about how common jazz is as a topic for RC
these days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can blame me. You can blame the jazz field if that ruined your score. I apologize on behalf of the jazz community.
No, that's good. So yeah, I talked to him for if you want any more background information, but quick plug for how to study for RC. You don't need to know background information on these topics. In fact, sometimes it actually psychs people out. Like people who are scientists already realize that they do worse on those STEM passages. And chances are it's because you're adding in your own outside knowledge. You don't want to be doing that. Words on the page. Anyways, that's besides the point for today. Today, we're talking about best and worst study habits for the LSAT. I think there's plenty of things that you can do that are not so helpful, as well as plenty of things that you can do that are helpful. And especially when you're starting studying, it's just so hard to figure out, like, what is the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? So yeah, let's start with just our own study journeys. Eric, did you notice that you kind of developed some habits that you realized later on were not so helpful, or were you doing the right thing the whole time? I'm curious.
I was definitely not doing the right thing the whole time. I'll say things that I felt like were not as helpful for me. I initially had a habit of I wasn't as super clear on the question types, and I think that was a symptom of I was self-studying at the time. I used certain books. But I wasn't, we'll say a bit cavalier with my attitude towards the test at times. And, you get some difficult questions right. You feel very clever. And it doesn't always shake out that way, right? And I think that really bit me because I ended up taking the test 3 times. And it really bit me a little bit the first time around because the way in which the test presents the material, like really being familiar with those question types can really help just streamline our thought process and make sure that we feel comfortable with what we're meant to be doing. And that's definitely something that I did not emphasize, admittedly, until I started teaching the test. And then I was really like, oh, this is actually probably a better way to organize the thought process a little bit. And ironically, it's now like the biggest part of what I do is not just because I work at Seven Sage, but just like inherently, I do think it's a very clean way of approaching the test. And there's no surprise that like we're very big on organizing content, question types, and beyond that as well, different sort of themes on the test.
Yes. No, this is funny because literally everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, that was me to the T. Like 100%. Yeah. I was like, this is BS. I don't need to learn all this extra curriculum to be able to be good at this test. This is just a reading and thinking test. Well, exactly. It is a really freaking hard reading and thinking test that you probably don't quite know how to read and how to think in the way that the test wants you to. And you probably don't know how to change your approach for every little question type, which technically you really do need to know how to do. Like if you want to confidently, consistently get in the 170s or whatever your goal score is, you got to have at least some semblance of, hey, what am I doing right now? Like, what's my job? What are the steps that I can follow? And how can I double check my answer for a necessary assumption question, which is going to be very different of how I'm going to double check my answer for a flaw question.
Yeah.
So good. I'm glad that we both went through that. And same, it literally wasn't until I was teaching that I realized that is like the thing that really just helps streamline the process for so many people. Like it feels counterintuitive because it's like, well, you know, when you start studying, you're like, it's going to take me so long to memorize all these question types and to learn how to approach them. Let me just do learning by doing and see what happens. But that is like the probably longest way that you can go about your
It is.
studying, the hardest
Yeah.
way. And that's what I did. And that's what you did. And so, yeah.
It is because you end up having to sort of reverse engineer all the strategies yourself.
Yes.
Um, and I mean, it can be done, right? It sounds like you did it too. You
Oh,
can sort of
yeah.
figure out, oh, I think this is what they're asking for, and this what tends to get the right answer. So
Mhm.
therefore, I think what they really want is this. But then ultimately, you're just defining the question type in a different way and then
Right.
identifying, which is important too, right? To identify what steps you should be taking. But to sort of create that from scratch is a lot um, well, it's more time consuming, and I'm a pretty stubborn person by nature, so
Same.
maybe it was kind of unavoidable that I had to force myself to go through that. But it's definitely not ideal. And I would say,
Same.
I mean, yeah, the information's there, and it's good information. There's no
No,
need to
exactly. It's like,
put
why
yourself
mess with
through
why
it, and
reinvent
like
the wheel? Yeah.
exactly. And at the end of the day, you're still going to end up with a wheel. Is you just take the one that you already have.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly, yeah, like, why make a whole new one? Exactly. No, I had the same things too, and by the way, I took the test 4 times, so I got you with +1. I was very, very stubborn, I kept signing up for the test before I was actually ready, just signed up for it when I was like, "You know what? I think I'm close enough, let's just see if I can pull it off by October," and that just didn't work, so we'll talk about a lot of that stuff, and honestly, that might be one of the ways that like, we didn't organize this already as one of the main categories of what's a bad way to study, but honestly, giving yourself a very specific shorter timeline and expecting to make a really high score jump in that timeline can be one of the things that you're already doing that's not setting yourself up for success. I don't know if you experienced any of that. Did you sign up for the test like whenever you were ready, or was it when
Oh,
you
I
felt
signed
like
up first. That's the first thing I did,
Yep,
which
same.
is not
Same.
which is also not, I mean, on the one hand, knowing myself, I do very well with deadlines. At the same
Same.
time, though, when you're it's great when you're trying to complete something and just get it in by then. It's not so great when you're actually trying to, like, learn something and internalize and learn it well, right? So,
Right.
ultimately, it was I mean, I suppose it's an experience, right? You experience the test. It is what it is. But certainly it wasn't clearly it wasn't the last time I took the test. Um yeah,
Same.
so it's not something I recommend. But it can create motivation. So I think
Right. Yeah, you
yeah,
win
I
some, you
wouldn't
lose
yeah.
some.
I think there's other ways of creating motivation is really what I think I'd say about that. You can
Right.
set your own deadlines. You can say, "Oh, I need to, learn these things by then," or "I wanna be able to take a prep test by this point." But there's no need to say, "I have to sit for the LSAT and have an official score on the record by the state." I think it's a very different sort of deadline to set, and it's not always, conducive to good learning.
Totally agree. Okay, cool. So, yeah, just to recap kind of what we've gone over so far, we're talking about just going into the test thinking that maybe you don't have to learn the question types or for whatever reason, not learning those question types. Again, I think it's so, so helpful. We have like 16 to 20-ish, depending on how you look at it, all our question types, which I
Mhm.
know that feels like a lot, but once you go chunk by chunk and just introduce yourself to each of them, that's what the core curriculum on Seven Savage is going to have you do. You learn the theory and approach behind the question type, which already puts you like sets you up for success. I wish I did that first. Then you go through, you try a lot of questions, you do some drills by the end. Highly recommend just going through the core curriculum as the first leg of your studying for sure. And then, in terms of just other study habits that people start to pick up on as they continue on their studying, what else works? What else doesn't work? I don't know. Did you ever move on from questions and try to just get through as many questions as you could in a day without reviewing them?
I that's actually something that I know a lot of people have that tendency because it feels good to do a lot of questions, right? Especially at the end of the day, you look back and say, "Wow, I did so many drills. I did a whole test as well." I really you know um, the grind was real, right?
Right.
I
Yes.
think for me, I think this is one of the things that incidentally it worked out in my favor is that I mean, we all hate it when we get questions wrong, right? Of course. But I can't get over them. I just can't get over them. So
Got
when I
you.
miss questions, it's so difficult to move on that for the rest of the day, I can't really do new questions until I really understand, or at least I think I understand what I did wrong. And sometimes that would take not hours of sitting there staring at it, but, hours of doing other things, chores, walking my dog, and I'm just the whole time thinking, "I can't believe I missed that question. Why did I pick this
Yes.
answer choice? How did I not see what was happening?" I would say that's a good thing. I think that's actually a good practice for deep learning. Certainly, it's not very enjoyable in the moment to just be revisiting. Um, we'll say a mistake. I won't say a stronger word than that. But I think it's a really good way to it's a good mindset to have, and I think, overdoing it with a lot of fresh drills and just kind of getting content done without trying to, really internalize it and learn it, I think is something I see a lot, because it's very tempting, right, to, as you were saying earlier, to learn by doing, which is useful, of course, and really powerful, but we have to make sure we know what we're doing, right? What exact get to the bottom of what we're doing, and I think that's something that, at least for me, I think just because of the person I am, I instantly did not make that mistake because I just have to obsess over questions I miss. For people who are less, we'll say, head in the sand in that way, I think in some ways that can be a difficult balance. Did you do a bunch of drills per day? Were you that kind of person?
Yeah, good question. So I am just a perfectionist by nature. So I
Mm,
think I
mhm.
kind of like was somewhere in between the two extremes. And I wouldn't say that I found the balance. I think that I kind of oscillated between the two extremes of getting really mad at myself for missing one question and then not letting myself move on to anything else for like, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I'd go on a walk or something and still be thinking about it. Like it would still be haunting me. Or sometimes I would just get pissed and I would be like, these questions suck. I just got to do more. Like, I'm over this. I'm not going to pay attention to why I got that one wrong because I'm just over this. And I would get mad and then I would just do more questions. And so I don't think that's super helpful, right? Like, I think that it's always quality over quantity. You really don't want to be walking away from a question until and you don't have to be perfect at explaining it, but until you could confidently explain it to somebody else.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's scary for a lot of people. But the more that you tell yourself that's possible to get to, you just got to start trying. You just got to make sure that you're really thoroughly watching those explanation videos, maybe reading the
Mhm.
written version of the notes if that helps you more, maybe coming to a class, asking questions if you're really stuck. There's so many ways that you can figure out where you went wrong and how to do better next time. But where you're really going wrong is if you're moving on from questions without being able to articulate where did I go wrong and what am I going to do better next time. So I think that's something that helps right away to slow you down and make sure that you're always doing that thorough review is just wrong answer journaling. Every wrong question, you're going to log, hey, how did I fall for the wrong answer? Why is it wrong? What's the right answer? How did I overlook it, eliminate it? Maybe I didn't even read it. And then what am I going to do better next time? I try to give myself specific drill sets, just a small like set of 5 flaw questions if I notice that I keep missing flaw questions, for example, or strategies. Like how do I read better? I would always just tell myself read better in my wrong answer journal and that wasn't helping. How do you literally read better? You got to pause mid sentence and rephrase into your own words before you read an entire sentence or an entire stimulus without really knowing what's going on. So those are just some quick things right here as to how that more thorough review might look. And just be honest with yourself. Like if you realize you keep moving away from questions when you're not really confident on them, that's probably why you're stuck in a score plateau. That's
Mhm.
probably why you have not been seeing the improvement that you want to see.
Yeah, and on that note, I think you mentioned, reading better. There were definitely there are, and I think everyone sort of has these tendencies. There's certain types of information that we tend to underestimate or skip over, even after we understand them. When we, review a question, I think having a very clear sort of like game plan of okay, the next time I see this word or this phrase, because a lot of these things, it is a standardized test. There's certain types of phrases that we emphasize at seven stage, or really everyone emphasizes as they should, because they really they can alter your perception of what's important in the question, and they can either, depending on how much you really call them out, they can really increase your accuracy or your speed or both, right? Because
Right.
what's happening. And I find when I was studying for the test, one of the biggest things for me was to just make sure, okay, I know if I emphasize this word when I'm reading, every time I see it, I'm just it'll make so much more sense, and I'm going to be much more confident that I'm going to get the right answer because evidently that's the thing that I keep just forgetting to emphasize. Words like should, the
Yes.
conditional language, of course, those sorts of things, or like we have all these fun tags at Seven Sage, the facts, beliefs, knowledge. The mayor
Mhm.
believes this, Eric believes this. Very dubious what I believe, but certainly something we should really call our attention to when we're studying. I think I totally agree. Being honest with yourself about what exactly are we like overlooking, or overestimating if we're really thinking too deeply about certain thing because we're so scared we're going to get it wrong or we're going to misinterpret it. I think really getting to the bottom of what exactly that thought process was and then trying to fix it. It takes longer than I think most people give credit for. Is to actually adjust that thought process, and that's why studying for the test can be frustrating, but also hopefully rewarding. Because once you finally like adjust that process, it all starts to like fall in place and all clicks because this one little piece, maybe multiple pieces, sort of just have to be rearranged slightly.
Right. Yeah. And that's so satisfying, right? Like, us being on the other side of it now, we can look back and be like, oh my gosh, I thought this test was so impossible. But
Mhm.
now we're powerful. Like, we know how to think. It feels so, so, so satisfying to just be able to know exactly how to get to the right answer over and over. So, yeah, I mean, that's your goal when you're wrong answer drilling, when you're reviewing, is that you're able to recognize those patterns. You can pick up on those words that maybe you want to be paying more attention to. Yeah, and by the way, when you were saying that, my mind immediately went to even just like the simple but, however, nonetheless, yet. When an author is making an argument and all of a sudden they're kind of using that but to contrast against what other people think or versus something else, that's always something to be looking out for. An LR and RC, like it introduces the author's argument, the author's position. So exactly, looking at those trends and just making sure that you're not moving on from a question until you can thoroughly explain where you went wrong, going to be so much more helpful.
Mhm.
All right. What about if I am really worried about how timed this test is? And so I feel like every drill, every section, every PT that I do ever, beginning to end of my studying, needs to be timed. What do you say to that? Is that a good way to study?
Definitely not. I mean, I'm a big believer in untimed practice, even for people who are scoring pretty well, by the way. I think in certain
Yes.
situations, depending on what you're trying to work on, I think untimed practice is the way to go. Similar to what we were talking about just now, I think because when you're under a time limit, you have to, or we should be, our thought process should be hopefully so well oiled and so efficient that we can move quickly with good confidence. But when that's not the case, either because we're practicing something that we're not as good at, or it's new to us, or it's just inherently very challenging content. Some questions on this test, I don't care how good you are at the test. I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there who's that good at the test, they could do it like lightning speed. But for the rest
Right.
of us who
For
still score
me,
very well,
it's going to
I'm
take
still
some
going to spend
time.
like a minute and a half, 2 minutes on certain questions because I'm just going to think about it and I really need to take my time. And so I think when we're practicing without that added pressure, it gives us the opportunity to try and implement things that we've been working on. Otherwise, you're gonna rush it. You're gonna rush your thought process. It's inevitable. It takes quite some mental fortitude to ignore a time limit that you sort of imposed on yourself, and to make sure you're
Right.
really, as you said, being honest with yourself. You're really thinking thoroughly about the question. And I don't know if it's possible if there's a time limit to really think in that way. So I would say untimed practice for most study, probably.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and you can kind of treat it like a sliding scale. As you get closer and closer
Yeah.
to your
Mhm.
test, you're probably going to do more full-time sections at least throughout the week, but I'm such a big fan of making sure that you're at least doing a couple on-time drills throughout the week, and especially we were talking about this before, but doing the kind of drill where you can view your answer after every question. Like if you want to get really really good at a certain question type or something that you've been struggling with, do an untimed drill, set it so that you can view your answer after every question and make sure that you're really thoroughly understanding where you went wrong with one question before you even move on to the next in the drill. And that might make you spend a lot more time on a drill than you normally would, but it's so worth it because untimed practice, we like to think about it in terms of this metaphor of like thermometer versus thermostat. Untimed practice is a thermostat. That's where you can actually change the temperature, move the needle. Time practice, like even full PTs or full sections or full drills that are just timed, are like thermometers. They tell you what the temperature is, but they don't help you move the temperature. They don't help you move the needle. And so making sure that you're investing enough of your practice throughout the week in that untimed thermostat so you can actually change things up, give your mind that mental leeway to try new things and see what works. that's where you start seeing improvement. And so if you've been studying for a while and you're like, I don't know why I'm not improving, but I've been doing a lot of things timed, there you go. I'll tell you exactly why you're not improving. It's because you're
Mhm.
not giving your brain the time to even think it through in the first place.
Yeah, and I know it's daunting to study for this test, and because we set, we all have obligations, so we probably have a test date in mind. We think, well, we gotta be doing time drills or time PTs, time sections by this time, otherwise we're not going to be ready. But still, trying to make sure that you actually learn the material so you can implement it in a time setting. It requires that untimed practice first, and I think it's great to have confidence in yourself, but also to sort of push yourself to that position. I think doesn't set yourself up for success in the way that maybe we all deserve.
Agreed. Exactly. Yeah. It's like success. I don't know why I always think like this, but I'm like, success is your birthright. It sounds so regal when you say it like that, but it
Yeah, I
is.
get it. Yeah.
And so don't you dare be doing things that are going to set you up for less than the success that you deserve, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we talked about making sure that you're thoroughly wrong answer journaling or just reviewing the right way. We talked about making sure that you're doing more untimed practice than you are doing timed, especially when you're trying to increase your accuracy. What else were we going to talk about?
Similarly, I think a lot of people who put in a lot of time on the test, um, in addition to maybe doing time drills too quickly, I think simply just doing too many questions or burning out after a number of weeks. I don't know. I think for me, spacing out the study was really important. I think when I was studying, even at the peak of my studying, I was doing maybe 5 days a week, so I actually never did 7 days a week.
Oh, me
I was a
neither.
big proponent of, taking break days, which I know is really hard because it definitely feels in the moment like, "Oh, we're not studying. I'm gonna lose my foothold, right, on what I've learned so far. I'm losing my momentum. Isn't this time better spent doing XYZ?" I mean, it depends, right? There's nuance there, certainly, but I think, given the importance of the test, most people have a tendency to overdo it rather than underdo it. And yeah, I don't know how much time did you actually spend per week studying, Bailey?
No, good question. People always ask me that. I'm like, I wasn't organized enough to like be able to tell you, hey, I did 15
Yeah,
hours a week, right? But
yeah.
no, same. I always gave myself some rest days. And I went through phases where I felt the pressure and I, heard about
Mhm.
other people studying like it's a 40-hour a week full-time job. And I'd be like, ah, shoot, that's what I should be doing. And then I would try it. And then I'd be like, well, this feels like a one-way ticket to burnout for me. So I don't know
Yeah.
how people are doing this. And honestly, I think the people that say that they're studying that much, is it really effective? Like, is that really the best thing that they can be doing? No, not necessarily. Like, we're humans. We're not LSAT robots. So don't be treating yourself as such. We need time to just rest and like let our brain that's been doing these really hard mental exercises recuperate. Like, I don't know much about sports, but I'm pretty sure if you're training for a marathon or if you're just trying to get really good at any sort of sport, you're not going to be pushing yourself to your upper limits every single day. You're not going to be like running a marathon every day to get your marathon up. That'd be insane. Like your legs are going to be jello by the end of it. Your
Yep.
brain's going to
Mhm.
be jello if you keep making yourself do this stuff over and over and over for like 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. So no, I didn't do that. I think that I found my sweet spot at like 2 to 4 hours a day on weekdays. And honestly, some days I could only fit in an hour or an hour and a half, and that's okay. Like the consistency of at least doing 5 days a week was a lot more helpful for me than just forcing myself to do a certain number of hours or a certain number of questions every day. And then once you get into that habit, like the good study habits that you just have the momentum going, you can let yourself take more breaks when you need to. Like maybe you're getting
Yeah.
to a point where you're like, I feel like I maybe just need to take the long weekend off or take a week off, dare I say, and then come back and kind of have a nice little mental reset. It really helps. And I have plenty of students too that have started to feel that burnout. And I'm like, okay, what if you just don't think about the LSAT for 4 days and then come back? And it usually helps so much. Like they're like, that's what I needed. Now everything's so much more clear.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot as well. I've had students who they study really hard for like maybe an April or May test, and then they take some months away, maybe because they just got a new job and they actually plan on
Yeah.
applying next cycle, or things don't happen on a certain application cycle, and so they decide maybe I'll start back up again next year. things usually work out a lot better. Not that everyone should be doing this. I understand that we don't need to stretch things out that much. But there is something to be said for giving yourself some time to really let things kind of marinate in your head
Yes.
subconsciously, right? And a lot of times you come back and you see it it's more objective something like you see the big picture of what they're asking for, and it all kind of, I mean, it's not that much easier. The test is very hard, but the things that you've been learning, it seems more approachable. It's more doable, right? And I think when we're deep in the weeds of like trying to figure out the nitty gritty, which we should all be doing, sometimes it's difficult to take that step back. So taking those breaks day at a time. Yeah, I would do. I think two intense days of study and then third day off every single time, because I found that for me,
Nice.
when I took that third, if I studied on that third day, my score would always drop at least 5 points every single time. 2 days in a row, I could manage. The second one was always very challenging, frankly, but that third day was always a no go. So there's no point in me studying that third day because I just know I'm going to perform worse. And it's not like there were things that, and there are things that should have been avoidable. You miss a couple words here and there. Even if you don't perceive that you're tired, it kind of creeps up on you. But everyone's different. I've certainly had students who just grind 7 days a week. It worked for them, but I would say that's not most people. Actually, I'd say most people. I think I usually recommend at least one break day a week. Take a Saturday off or something, or a Friday
Right.
if you got something to do Friday night, which not everyone does. But if you do, great.
And give
But I'd
yourself
say for
something to
most
do,
people, yeah,
right? Like, I think
yeah,
it's so yeah, I think so many people are like, "I have given up every Friday night." I'm like,
yeah. It
"Why?"
doesn't
Like,
have to be
"Wait,
that way.
you don't
Yeah.
have to." Yeah, go do something so that you just again, you're treating yourself like a human, not an LSAT robot, because that's what
Hmm.
you are. Like, why would you treat yourself any different?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Actually, there's something you said earlier. It's just a weird analogy. You were mentioning marathons. Am I thinking of, is it Chariots of Fire? I watched that a long time ago. There's a movie
Ooh,
about
I don't
runners,
know it,
Olympic
but
runners. I
maybe.
can't remember where there's a runner and they like the scientists figured out that the distance between his steps needs to be shorter or something. Um
Oh,
I can't
interesting. Wait, this is
I
good.
can't
No, this is
remember this
good.
movie. It's the only movie I remember about running. Not that I watched many movies about running. But anyways, you reminded me because it goes to show, I hope, it goes to show that like there's these very small things like the habits that you have that if you adjust them slightly, sometimes it takes an outside perspective to tell you like, hey, your steps, if you just make them a little bit smaller, you can actually go faster, which is maybe a bit counterintuitive because you close less distance per step. But there's something about like unpacking your thought process to really make sure that in the long run, when it comes time for a test day, you can, something becomes your second nature, right? Like the way that you walk or run, which we would think everyone can
Yes.
do, just like everyone can read. But the way you sort of edit yourself in a certain way can actually be very hard, and it's very difficult to analyze it unless you're really like looking for it.
No, I totally agree, and I think that's a really good way to kinda bring that together because it like, immediately that made me think of the advice that I always give people on the LSAT: "Slow is smooth, smooth is fast." This is
Yeah,
true when you're
exactly.
reading, when you're
Hmm.
understanding, when you're making decisions, like, you gotta go slowly enough to make sure that you're making the right decisions and you're interpreting things correctly, but then you save time. Where it gets fast is because 'cause you're confident, you know what you just read, and you know that you're making a sound decision. So exactly, it's like little tweaks like that where like, what do you mean me reading the stimulus slower is going to make it so I get better big picture and I actually end up getting the questions right and I can do it faster? I know it feels weird, it feels counterintuitive, but try it. See if when you are breaking down these stimuli, you go a little bit slower, actually you're going to just get so much faster in the big picture. So exactly, it's like little tweaks like that where maybe you don't realize that these habits that you've created when you're reading, when you're reasoning, when you're studying big picture are not really helpful, but
Yeah.
now when we can kind of zoom out and see that perspective, it's like, "Ooh, wait, that's actually not really helping you in the long term."
No. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, cool. So this was awesome. We covered a lot. If you guys resonated with any of these things that you have been realizing that maybe you've been studying not so great about and you are still confused about exactly what to do, leave us comments. If you have more ideas of things that you have maybe heard as LSAT advice and you want to get our expert opinion on is this right or wrong? Is this a helpful or not helpful way? Please leave comments below. And, like, comment, subscribe, turn your notifications on. What are the other things we should say here? Oh, if we ever choose one of your comments or questions, by the way, to answer on a podcast, we'll grant you a magical little free month of LSAT classes. I was about to say LSAT. What? Of Seven Sage plus live. So highly recommend being interactive with us. Ask us questions. We'll get right back to you. And then also check out Seven Sage for our other services. We got plenty on there. We got admission services, tutoring services. We got group courses if you want to join more of a group that's going to be learning the LSAT all together, full curriculum. It's super helpful. And join our live classes as well. Both Eric and I are live class instructors. We do lots of kind of like drop-in classes throughout the week that you don't have to have come to classes before to be able to improve on. And hopefully you can start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as you reach out to these resources. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. We'll see you next time on the Seven Sage LSAT podcast. Bye.